All right, we got some new news here. Check this out. Looks like a Breaking Bad scene. Cops on Canadian sick drug SUPERLAB. You can't even make this up. This literally does look like something you would see in a Hollywood movie or TV show. During the raids, officers seized 54 kilograms of fentanyl, 390 kilograms of methamphetamine, 5 kilograms of cocaine, 15 kilograms of MDMA, 6 kilograms of cannabis. An insane record drug bust, the largest drug bust in Canada. They are literally calling it a drug super lab. The Pacific Region RCMP federal policing program on Thursday claimed it has delivered a decisive blow to a major transnational organized crime group by dismantling the largest and most sophisticated fentanyl and methamphetamine drug super lab in Canada. The combined fentanyl and precursors seized at this facility could have amounted to over 95.5 million potentially lethal doses of fentanyl, which have been prevented from entering Canadian communities and exported abroad. This is insane news. We take a look here, we have a literal Breaking Bad style setup going on here. The entire camp from above, a drone shot, a helicopter shot from above, and the RCMP going through and dismantling it and taking it apart. On top of all the drugs and precursor chemicals, they seized a total of 89 firearms, 45 handguns, 21 AR rifles, and possible submachine guns. The searches also yielded small explosive devices, large amounts of ammunition, firearm silencers, high-capacity magazines, body armor, and $500,000 in cash. Have a video here showing off the table of what they seized. And this is the Liberal government at its finest. Allowing literally millions of people to come in unchecked and pretty much reign free to do what they please. And that's how we get what they are calling a super drug lab. 54 kilos of fentanyl. Massive. BC RCMP announced bust of largest drug super lab in Canadian history.
Federal policing investigators have dismantled the largest and most sophisticated drug super lab in Canadian history and seized a record numbers of illegal firearms, synthetic drugs, and precursor chemicals. As part of the RCMP's federal policing program's proactive effort to combat the domestic production and exportation of fentanyl and methamphetamine to other countries, federal policing investigators in BC conducted a series of coordinated enforcement actions over the weekend and executed search warrants at a drug super lab in Falkland, BC, and its associated locations in the city of Surrey, BC. As a result, investigators seized approximately half a ton of hard drugs, including the following: 54 kilograms of fentanyl, 390 kilograms of methamphetamine, 35 kilograms of cocaine, 15 kilograms of MDMA, and 6 kilograms of cannabis. In addition to the massive quantities of drugs and precursor chemicals, investigators seized a total of 89 firearms, which included dozens of handguns, AR-15 assault rifles, and submachine guns, many of which were loaded and ready to use. The searches also yielded several explosive devices, a massive amount of ammunition, firearm silencers, high-capacity magazines, body armor, and $500,000 in cash. Furthermore, the investigation to date has resulted in the seizure of a very significant volume of unregulated and scheduled precursor chemicals, approximately 5,000 liters of precursor chemicals, and over 10 tons of powdered precursor chemicals.
We go back here just very briefly. Look at the size of this table they have everything set up on. Holy shit. The preliminary speculation is that the drug seizure cut off at least an estimated $485 million in profits to a transnational organized crime network. This is actually massive. I cannot stress it enough right now. Our government has failed in so many ways. They have allowed Walter White and the gang to literally reign free these insanely elaborate drug labs. I mean, look at this equipment. Look at some of this equipment. Massive drug production operation. The RCMP believes that organized crime groups were behind the mass production and international distribution of fentanyl and meth, orchestrated through the drug lab in Falkland, British Columbia, and supported by locations in Surrey, Metro Vancouver. Insane stuff. And it's not just the fact that they had this elaborate drug setup. These guys were armed to the teeth. These guys were ready to put themselves clearly on the line for something. And yeah, $500,000 in cash proves that, along with the absolute arsenal that they have on the desk here that we're looking at. The body armor, the ammunition, every single aspect of it here. Fucking wild. This is happening in your neighborhoods, literally in your neighborhoods. Walter White and the boys. Like, look at this, man. Gallon buckets and everything set up. Ventilation out the ass. It is literally something you would see from Breaking Bad. This just further shows the lack of care the Liberal government puts into pretty much everything. Along with the NDP. Jagmeet and David Eby are just as equally responsible for this as Trudeau is. I'm curious to how long this SUPERLAB would have been running for under the current government. Again and again, the lack of care the Liberal government shows. It's just on the center stage for everybody to see. There is no hiding it anymore. When stuff like this is coming out, when the BC RCMP are saying things like drug SUPERLAB, and they are seizing almost 400 kilos of methamphetamine. They're out of touch. They've turned a blind eye, literally, to all of Canada, and the streets are being run by clearly some sort of insane operation like this. They are calling it the largest and most sophisticated drug SUPERLAB in Canada, period. This guy, whose name I will not even bother to learn or pronounce because I don't give a shit about said individual, has been slammed with multiple charges, and if you want my honest opinion, he should fucking go away for the rest of his life based on this. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. I will see you guys for question period on Monday. Here is a little throwback to last week on Wednesday.
Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois and the leader of the Bloc Québécois has literally nothing, delivered nothing for Quebecers, nothing for seniors, nothing for farmers. But despite that, he voted almost 200 times to keep this prime minister in power. He voted for $500 million in inflationary bureaucratic spending, $500 million in deficit spending. At the same time, Quebecers are suffering from the cost of housing, which has doubled. Will the Prime Minister accept to call an election so that Quebecers can support my plan to get rid of GST on new homes? Just before I recognize the Prime Minister, I would just like to ask all members, please, to put your phones on silence. It's good for the interpreters. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said it in English, I'll repeat it in French. We know that one of the fundamental responsibilities of everyone in this House is to protect the safety, security, and well-being of Canadians. However, with his completely unexplainable decision to not get his security clearance, the Conservative leader is putting Canadians at risk, including members of his own party. That's why I have asked our security services to share as much information as possible with the Conservative leader so that he can better protect his MPs, despite the fact that
he just keeps repeating the same thing over and over again and not providing anything. Come on. This is ridiculous.
This Prime Minister doubled housing costs, doubled the debt, doubled gun crime, and now doubled food bank use, that the NDP would be pulling its support. After all, the leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interest to fight for people, and yet there he is, still in power. He doesn't even have the confidence of his own Liberal MPs, but he seems to still have the confidence of the sellout NDP leader. So, will the costly carbon tax coalition stand up in front of Canadians and let people vote in a carbon tax election for change in the future?
I ask members to be very judicious in their
colleagues,
choice of words
please
regarding
turn off
specific
your cell
members.
phones, please.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, watchers of Canadian politics will remember that
Mr.
last
Government?
year, the Conservative Party got up pretty much every time they could to talk about national security, to talk about it in a partisan way, but to talk about it every chance they could get. And now that we have offered the Leader of the Opposition a security clearance so that he can be fully informed on national security, all that they've been able to say is political attacks and asking questions of other parties. Why has the Leader of the Opposition chosen to not get a security clearance when the safety of his own MPs is in the balance?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it looks like the Prime Minister is worried about his personal political security as his MPs are revolting and trying to push him out of the job. And so he's desperately trying to change the channel on the questions that I've asked. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think that's unfair, though. Those MPs helped this Prime Minister double housing costs, double the debt, double gun crime, double food bank use. Why won't he turn around and look them in the eye and say they should stand up for their own record and his, face the music in a carbon tax election?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no responsibility by the government is more important than keeping Canadians safe. That's why our security services...
That's why your government has allowed all of these things to happen to put us in the situation we are, where you keep repeating yourself about the opposition not having their security clearance while not providing any evidence or proof, or this list of names of MPs and senators that you had that just magically has disappeared now. We're not talking about that anymore. It's actually amazing how this guy got voted into power more than once. All he does is manipulate and lie. And they sit there and they back him.
He wants to release the name.
Like, they must truly be terrified of Trudeau. Like, the Liberal Party must be scared of him. Because if they truly wanted to leave or have him resign, they would step across to the other side. They would become independent. The Bloc would have fucking already called a vote of non-confidence. But here we are. Playing games, watching Big Bad Greg lay the smackdown. Colleagues, please, order.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, now we're getting something. He's actually engaging on the issue.
Thank you for stopping by, Jennifer. Hopefully you have a good rest of your day or night. Thank you for stopping by.
That are putting their lives at risk to keep Canadians safe. There is a reason we do not disclose classified information in places where our adversaries are watching and paying attention. But we can release many names to him and much information to him if he only gets his security clearance. So he will be able to keep his own team members safe from foreign interference, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, Trudeau. You silly, silly man.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He won't release the names because he knows that he and his party are compromised. And he won't answer my question because right now, 24 of his MPs are rebelling against him. They're asking for a secret ballot to fire him, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, as I say, that is not fair. Every one of those MPs helped this Prime Minister create 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario. Every one of them voted to quadruple the carbon tax. They can't just throw him out. He can't just run away. They need to face the music. Why won't we have a carbon tax election now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For well over a year in this House, just about every question from the Leader of the Opposition was about national security, was about foreign interference. And we called a commission of inquiry. We've offered security clearances to all leaders. And indeed, the leader of the Green Party, the NDP, and the Bloc have all done the responsible thing and gotten their security clearances and gotten top-secret briefings from our security services. The leader of the Conservative Party chooses to play the pettiest form of politics instead of stepping up on his responsibilities as leader, protecting Canadians, protecting his MPs, protecting our institutions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, security and safety depends on housing. In Quebec, the cost of housing has doubled. In Montreal, the cost of rent has tripled after 9 years of this Prime Minister who's building bureaucracy, who's printing money, who's broken the immigration system, and who has applied taxes on corrupt businesses. And that's why I've proposed a common sense idea to cut the GST on housing. The Prime Minister says that he'd rather put money into bureaucracy. I want to cut taxes for those who are buying a home. Can we have an election on the question of eliminating the GST on housing? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are extremely perplexed right now because we know very well that the Conservatives, apparently, according to themselves, are interested in law and order and crime and national security and defense. It's in everything that they put out in the elections. But when it comes time where there's a real threat to Canadians' safety and even to the safety...
Like right now, how there's fucking other countries interfering in our government and have been for years now? You mean that kind of security of Canadians, Trudeau? Oh my God. My brain is melting.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Every party here voted to protect supply management with C-282. Every party stood with farmers to call on the Senate to stop blocking this bill. Everyone is telling Senators Beam and Harder to get to work. It's time today for the Prime Minister to take his responsibilities seriously, to be responsible for our farmers. He appointed the senators who are blocking this bill, and it's his fault that we're stuck with them. Will he finally ask these two Royal Highnesses to pass Bill C-282 immediately? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have always been very clear that we will protect supply management. That's what we did against the Trump administration. That's what we will continue to do by making sure that we keep our promises to always protect supply management in any free trade negotiations that we undertake in the coming years. We are defending that right now, and we expect the Senate to pass this bill so that we can make sure that the future of supply management will always be protected for Canadians. We completely agree with the Bloc Québécois on this. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Well, nice words, Mr. Speaker, but not only did he appoint these senators, the senators that are blocking C-282, but one of the two of them is even a good buddy of his. Peter Harder brags about it on his Senate webpage. He says that the Prime Minister, when he was in the opposition, called him several times for advice and help. And then 6 months later, he got a Senate seat.
Yeah, you can put the name of the channel in, I don't care. I don't know if it'll allow links, though. I don't think the chat allows links, but if you just want to put the name in, yeah, I don't care.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the independence and the important work that the Senate does. The Senate studies bills, makes recommendations, and over the years, we've appointed exceptional senators who are doing responsible and diligent work in that place. At the same time, we always expect the senators to take into account the will and the decisions of this House. And the House voted unanimously to protect supply management, as we've always committed to do, protecting supply management in any trade agreement and free trade negotiations. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. 9 years after this Prime Minister promised to end chronic homelessness, it's gone up by 38%. But happily, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness says that my Conservative plan to eliminate the GST on the purchase of a new home is, quote, intelligent. So if the Prime Minister is really interested in ending the housing crisis that he created, will he listen to the people who are trying to end homelessness and accept my common sense plan and eliminate the GST on new homes?